Hi, my name is Jane. I'm from Cupertino. Republicans have always wanted a bathtub-sized government. Is this really why Trump is getting all the complicit silent support? And I have a second question. Are we an oligarchy and we're just all gaslighted that we are anything but that? Thank you.
It's Tuesday, December 8th, just 43 days from the inauguration. And unlike Melissa Carone, we know that contact drunk is not the only thing you get when you sit too close to Rudy. Today on Vote for America, we'll be talking with the Lincoln Project's own Susan Del Percio and Tom Nichols. And now our host, Lincoln Project co-founder Jennifer Horn.
Welcome to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so happy that you are joining us again today. It's great to have you here. So we are just 43 days until the swearing in of the next president of the United States. Joseph R. Biden is going to be the 46th president. And no matter what Donald Trump does between now and then, he is still going to be out of office on January 20th. And Joe Biden is still going to be the next president. So no matter what kind of noise he makes, what kind of agita he tries to cause, comfort yourself in knowing that the process is going. Today, in fact, is that, what do they call, a safe harbor day. Today is safe harbor day when it comes to counting votes. And so it is just full steam ahead from here. We just want to share some more news with you as well. We've been trying to keep you updated on what's happening in the world, unfortunately, of coronavirus and some of the developments in that area. We have some new numbers for you. There were 8,867 new cases of coronavirus diagnosed in the United States yesterday. 8,867 in one day of new cases. 1,522 people, unfortunately, lost their lives to the coronavirus yesterday in the United States. But there is good news for us to focus on today. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, as we all saw reported this morning. The first person to receive a vaccine for COVID-19 was a 90-year-old woman in Ireland. She became the first patient this morning to receive the Pfizer COVID vaccine that is being rolled out over there. And I love this picture of her. She's got her Christmas T-shirt on with her penguin and the snow falling on the T-shirt. go and look up this story. It's very, very encouraging. This is one of the first vaccines that have been approved. It is starting to roll out. We know that we will be able to have access to a vaccine here in the United States sometime in the weeks or a month or two ahead. That we are also on schedule for the same thing. It is unfortunate, it is tragic that we have lost as many lives as we have, and that we will unfortunately continue to lose lives to this pandemic. It was so unnecessary, so avoidable in so many of these cases. But I am grateful to see that the vaccine is starting to roll out, and I hope that gives you all as much hope as it gives me. I'm very happy to have as a guest host today a friend of mine from the Lincoln Project. She's one of our senior advisors. You've seen her here before. I'm sure you've seen her on TV as well. Very happy to welcome Susan Del Percio. Good afternoon, Susan. It's great to see you today.
It's so great to be with you today, Jennifer.
I'm really happy to have you. I have to say, I'm very excited about the progress that we're seeing when it comes to a vaccine to this disease. It has the pandemic, the infection rate, the spikes that we've been seeing all over the country that have come in waves. It's been such a difficult year for everybody. This really is the first time, I think, when I'm starting to genuinely embrace and the idea of hope, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's a perfect way of putting it. But the thing is that the tunnel is still pretty long. That light is there, but it's far away, meaning we have to be very diligent over the next few months. It doesn't look like that virus will be hitting until probably late winter or early spring, that everyone could have access to it. So we all have to be extremely diligent. That means wearing masks, social distancing. We don't have the numbers back from the Thanksgiving spread. There's going to be a holiday spread. We have to work very hard and be very diligent to keep each other safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not over. It is not over yet by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to hold on to the positive, to the encouragement and the hope that we see ahead of us. But here at our house, and I hope the same for you and everybody else, we are diligently sanitizing our hands, wearing our masks. As much as we all want to be with family at the holidays, we would love to have 40 or 50 or 60 people in the house on Christmas. We're not there yet, certainly. We don't want people to overreact to this. But our day is coming. Our time is definitely coming. The United States is going to see the distribution of a vaccine in the months ahead. And then from there, hopefully, we will get this thing under control. And honestly, Susan, that's one of the most encouraging things about knowing that Joe Biden is going to be sworn into office soon. We've watched how he's conducted himself in this transition. In particular, the first thing he did, you and I have talked about this several times, even before the election, the first thing he did was announce that his pandemic team and who was going to kind of take the reins and start to show leadership on this issue. So that by itself encourages me. But let's talk a little bit. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the President-elect Biden's transition, and in particular, some of the appointments that he's been making. I have my thoughts about it, which I'll save for a second. Just kind of from the 1,000-foot level, the 10,000-foot level. What is your first impression of the team that President-elect Biden is putting together?
The president-elect is going to be fighting a war against the coronavirus, and he has put together a wartime cabinet. It is experienced, it is diverse, and it is a very competent group of people. And when we talk about diversity, which I know we'll get into, it's important to remember that it means differences of opinion, points of view. And that, to me, is where I'm the most open and happy about the president-elect and his term starting, because he will listen to the experts. He is good with not knowing every little detail and knowing the science behind it. He trusts the science. He trusts the professionals, and he will move forward. This cabinet shows confidence in the job he knows he can do as well. He is secure enough to put people in that excel at everything that they are in their wheelhouse.
Right. Maybe the most dangerous thing about Donald Trump is his belief that he is the greatest expert at everything that ever crosses his desk. Well, let's even back up a step. And Joe Biden made a promise about his cabinet and his whole administration that he made on a promise on diversity. So let's look at that real quick first.
What I can promise you is when this is all said and done, you see everyone that I've announced and it's going to be in the next several weeks, we'll have it all out there. You're going to see significant diversity. I'm not going to tell you now exactly what I'm going to do in any department, but I promise you, it'll be the single most diverse cabinet based on race, color, based on gender that's ever existed in the United States of America.
And the president-elect has kept that promise. Maybe his first campaign promise that we can see, with our own eyes that he's keeping as we look at the picks. And I know they had a graphic up a second ago. Maybe if they go back to that and let people kind of see who some of these people are that the president's talking about, that the president-elect is talking about. And the other thing about a lot of these names, these people, we Anthony Blinken, Janet Yellen, Jake Sullivan. We can go right down the list. The other thing that I think is interesting about a lot of these people, Susan, to you and I as Republicans, lifelong Republicans, it's hard to look at any list full of Democratic nominees and say, oh, there are some moderates in there, because we just have a different perspective on, conservatism, republicanism, and that sort of thing. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, you look at a lot of these names, these are not the radical left of the Democratic Party. There are some very reasonable, clear thinking, and certainly all of them very experienced people on that list.
Yeah, look at Janet Yellen. I mean, she's a perfect example. And Avril Haines, the new director of national security, she has been in government and serving multiple administrations. These are people who have excelled in their field. And yes, they may be a woman, they may be of color. That is secondary to making sure that Joe Biden has the best people around him. And you know what? I will disagree probably with the point of view and some of the policies of some of these people. But guess what? Joe Biden was elected. He gets to pick his own cabinet. And as a result, he's putting people in that he's comfortable with. We knew from the start, the Democrats knew it too. They never put in a progressive. They put in a moderate who would listen to progressive ideas. And dare I say it, listen to conservative ideas. That's what you want from your president.
That's one of we've talked about this before. I've said this many times, that the Democratic Party, and again, as a party chair, I was a state party chair for 4 years, that I can't believe my own ears sometimes when I hear, some of the things that I have to say. But I'm very happy to admit, the Democratic base, the primary voters in this election cycle, made a very conscious strategic choice when they nominated Joe Biden. They had, the full spectrum of Democratic and liberal ideas to choose from on their primary ballots, and they chose the guy that they recognized was more moderate, who could win. They chose a guy who could win, and that's what we kind of struggle with inside party politics sometimes, is trying to encourage the base to choose the guy who can actually win. The Democrats did it this time. And what I would suggest that what we're seeing from Joe Biden as he goes through this transition process is exactly why. This is why he was able to earn the trust of enough Republican voters in the swing states and across the country to win, to be able, to win on election day. And these cabinet picks, I think, are reflective of what his approach is going to be to the presidency.
Indeed, they are, especially when it comes to fighting the coronavirus.
Right. Yes, absolutely. But let me ask for your opinion on something. What is the likelihood that Joe Biden, at some level, some significant level of his administration, will find one or two more moderate Republicans to appoint?
I can't help but think it won't be at the cabinet level, but it could be in the envoy level. It could be an ambassadorship. For example, Cindy McCain, the wife of the late John McCain, was supportive of Joe Biden. She has been talked about being a potential ambassador to Britain and to France. That's something we can see. I think that also maybe at the deputy secretary level, there may be names out there that we're not all familiar with, but excel in policy that will be brought in. But I think it would be a little too much to expect at this point in time that he will bring in a Republican at the cabinet level.
Maybe in some future administration, some future cycle. It
Yeah.
would be nice to feel
Or 2
like
years.
we might, or 2, yeah. I was gonna say, it would be nice to have that feeling that we are capable of that as a nation, where leadership, once they achieve that level of leadership, where they can put that a little bit of that partisanship aside, and bring smart, experienced voices from across the aisle to the table at the same time. Frankly, Susan, that's what I think people voted for this year. We saw it in, the split ticket that, came up that, kind of led the day in so many states where they went with Biden at the top and then chose Republicans in Congress. I really believe that people are looking for some stability, but also some unity, bringing voices from across the political spectrum to the same table to lead together, which is kind of an old-fashioned idea, I guess, but something I think people are yearning for. So let's talk about
It's a good one,
the next.
Jennifer.
Yeah, oh, good one. I know.
I like that one.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe in it. Listen, Susan, I'm going to tell you from my heart, I believe that's what people were looking for, and I believe that it's possible. I believe that we can achieve this, but you need people in leadership to want it as much as we all do down here, all of us commoners down here in the grassroots. So let's talk a little bit about General Lloyd Austin. We've learned that he looks like he's going to be the guy that Biden taps to lead to be Secretary of Defense. This is an interesting pick, right? He wasn't necessarily everybody's first choice on either side of the aisle. Highly experienced, absolutely qualified for the job, but comes with a a special need in that he's going to require a waiver in order to be for his nomination to be affirmed. How does that work?
Well, basically, you have to be retired from the military for at least 7 years to be considered a civilian and put into the position of the DOD, the Defense Secretary. If you haven't been gone for 7 years, you need a waiver. That waiver was given once in the 1940s to General George Marshall under Truman, and then 70 years later to General Mattis with Donald Trump. And Mattis got through because even though people didn't like the idea of a general coming in for DOD, they felt he was a stabilizing force for Donald Trump and his administration since he was so inexperienced when it came to these issues. Now you fast forward, though, 17 Democrats in the Senate did not give that waiver, citing the need for civilian oversight. So that's 17 already on the record saying it. You have Senator Jack Reed, the most senior Democrat on the Senate Arms Committee, and he said he would never vote for that waiver again. So that's just on the Democratic side. And then it'll be interesting to see what the Republicans say. I don't think they could use it as an excuse on the waiver. And DOD is not a political job. It is a national security job. It is keeping our country safe. And given the General Austin's commentations and his service to his country, he is qualified. He's also served as the Deputy Chief of Staff to the U.S. Military, and that allows him to be familiar with the building, if you will. So he is well credentialed for this. I understand there's been some give and take. There's some concern that he is too heavy in the Middle East and doesn't have enough experience in Asia. But these are all things that he can certainly learn, as many civilians have to.
Right. It's rare, I suppose, that you have somebody come into this kind of a position who is already an expert on the entire world, who, or at least who has had, firsthand experience in the entire world. And I would suggest that his experience in the Middle East is very important. As much as we are focused on Asia in other ways nowadays, the Middle East hasn't gone away. as being one of the most critical areas of the world that the United States has to be focused on. So he's qualified and probably able to do the job well. It will be interesting, to your point, Susan, to see how the nomination process unfolds with this guy. It certainly wouldn't be the first time that an elected member of Congress changed their mind or acted in a manner that was contrary to something they had said before. You know, this is that part's not really a huge surprise, I don't think. So what is, let me go back and just, let's talk a little bit, kind of looking forward then with this, who we've seen so far that the president-elect has chosen. Who's out there? I think the Attorney General is one of the big ones. What are the big ones left that we are still don't know which direction he's going to go?
Yeah, we've seen 3 of the 4 big ones done with the Department of Defense that we just talked about, Treasury, and Secretary of State. Now for Attorney General, I see that graphic up there. First, let's look at Sally Yates. Incredible record. She was actually the Deputy Attorney General under President Obama. She was named Acting Attorney General under Trump, where she served for 10 days. Yes, 10 days. What led to her being fired immediately was she refused to enforce the first Muslim ban. She didn't find it to be legal. Now that was a tremendous deal. If we go back and remember the rallies and all the outcry against what turned out to be an illegal order. So she was right on that. She also is the one, though, and what I think insiders really think burned her chances of survival was she was the one who called out Michael Flynn, General Flynn, for potentially being a security risk and being compromised by the Russians. And then it all spiraled out.
So what we know right away about Sally Yates is that she has the integrity for the job.
Absolutely, surely. Doug Jones, you also had up there, certainly a man of integrity. He won the Alabama special election against Roy Moore. He was a prosecutor from Alabama. He famously prosecuted members of the KKK in the 16th Street Baptist church bombings. And that happened in 1963. The prosecution didn't happen until 1998. So that was well known in his resume. And because cabinets are political, I think that there may be some interest also in seeing Jay Johnson, another potential pick there. Jay Johnson, former head of Homeland Security, as well as the former general counsel to the Department of Defense, which his name was also mentioned for. So if they were looking for more diversity there, that they could be looking towards Jay as well. But when you look at the 3 of them, just like when we looked at the top 3 for DOD, wow, these are good, capable people of principle. It matters.
Absolutely. And that's what we've said through this whole cycle, that character matters, integrity matters. I would love, I would love to see some Republicans, something to the right of center in some of these positions. At this level, that's not going to happen. There's nobody on that list that you just talked about that would offend me as a Republican, as a conservative, as anything like that. They have proven themselves and they bring something to the table. I think each one of that's unique to each one of them that is valuable. Personally, and this will probably doom both of them just for me saying it. Personally, I think I would love to see Sally Yates. I would love to see Jay Johnson, one of the 2 of them in that role, and different reasons for each of them. And, probably if somebody out in the audience is listening to me say that, and they're going to make the argument for why Doug Jones is the obvious choice, for that position. But I think Sally Yates did something really extraordinary. And I think she proved herself in a way, in a situation under a type of fire that most nominees who come forward never had to confront, never had to face. And I think that the American people right now are really worried about the integrity of the institution of government, and we've seen so much corruption under Donald Trump and the way that he has used appointments to advance either people that have given him money or people that he thinks that will protect him as an individual, rather than people who will protect the presidency and the Constitution and the institutions of our country. And for whatever reason, I just feel like Sally Yates, like she just rings true to me for those reasons. But I gotta say, it'd be hard to make an argument. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you one more. She knows that she can walk into the building and do the job on day one. There is no learning curve. She was Deputy Attorney General. She knows this office. She knows its job. She knows what to look for and how to manage that staff.
Right. And in an age when we have so much of the electorate is, kind of pushed by this idea of it's a swamp, get rid of everybody, vote all of them out, that's why we like Trump, because he just got rid of. I think what we've learned in these last 4 years is how important it is to sometimes, in some positions, have people that actually have experience, that know what they're talking about, who are able to conduct themselves appropriately, and actually know the job. To your point.
Absolutely, Jennifer, and also again to bring in different voices underneath them. Who are they listening to? So that's equally as important, because you under the Trump administration, it seems like every agency is now enacting because he fired someone and no one else could get Senate confirmed because they were all Trump sycophants and they knew that they wouldn't get through, or they just had bad backgrounds for it. So a lot of positions, essential positions in government, have been empty for 4 years. And now it's time to bring back professionalism. I know we're going to have Tom Nichols on in a little bit, and he talks about the need for expertise. So we need it. And I think Joe Biden will bring it.
And we've been talking so much since Election Day also about, what does a Joe Biden, not just administration, but kind of like, what does a Joe Biden America look like? What does a Joe Biden leadership look like? What will actually change that we as just, regular folks, walking through our day and getting to work and all that, like what will change that we all will see and feel? And I think what you just talked about, it kind of goes to the heart of it. Our government, our country is going to be run by experienced people again. So a lot of these things that have overwhelmed us, why is the American public so exhausted by Trump? Because it's been constantly in our face, his failures, his attacks, his, all of the corruption, all of the damage that has come, but it's every day. I think what we're seeing from Joe Biden right now is that he's putting together a team that we aren't going to have to hear about every day. Like they're actually going to just function smoothly for the most part. And we can get up and do our own jobs and not worry about how these people are doing their jobs.
Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful not worrying about what Joe Biden tweeted today? I mean, just that alone. And the other thing is, it seems that to me that another stark difference is that we had in Donald Trump a president that was vengeful. It seemed like every day he went out to hurt somebody or beat somebody at something that he deemed, it's an us versus them kind of world. And I think what the president-elect will do is bring and teach us there is value and we should rise up and all do well and expect better from us, not trying to beat someone down.
Right. It'll be nice to have that kind of a leadership example on the world stage again as well from somebody like Donald Trump. I'm impressed by the discipline of this team, frankly, as well. There are no leaks coming out of the transition so far that I've heard about. They all seem to respect each other. And as a result of that, they seem to respect the American people as well, which is something I think we've all been kind of yearning for. So, Susan, we do have a great guest coming up next. Tom Nichols, he is one of the senior advisors here at the Lincoln Project. He's authored a couple of books that I can't wait to talk about a little further with him when he gets here. But before that, we are going to go to a break and bring you this from the Lincoln Project.
America is hurting. There's a sickness in the land, more than just a virus that could have been controlled long ago. our faith is being tested. Our faith in each other, in the goodness of America. This is Joe Biden's moment. What his life prepared him for. Not an easy life, but being an American isn't about what's easy. It's about never giving up. He came from a family on hard times, overcame a crushing disability, endured the worst loss a man can imagine, and he never gave up. Joe Biden kept the faith that love is stronger than hate, that kindness is stronger than anger.
As I look across America today, hope seems elusive.
Today, it's not easy in America. Maybe it's destiny.
My answer is this.
Maybe a higher power.
You and I are part of a covenant.
But once again, the right leader is here to bring us together.
If we do our part,
This is Joe Biden's moment.
if we stand together,
This is our moment.
then the divisions of our time will give way
This is America.
to the dreams of a brighter, better future. We can be what we are at our best. The United States of America.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We know what this is. It's Kelly Loeffler trying to play the race card to divide us. It's meant to scare you. It doesn't change anything or help any of us. This is the old politics. Georgia's too busy to hate. Our state should be a leader in business, education, science, sports. Don't let Kelly Loeffler take us back. Vote for the better Georgia.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so happy that you're with us today and looking forward to our next guest. Tom Nichols is a senior advisor to us here at the Lincoln Project. He's an expert in national security and has long been a principled voice opposing Donald Trump. He has an active conversation on these topics on social media on a daily basis. I'm sure most of you already know who he is. He's also got a new book out. It's called Our Own Worst Enemy by Tom Nichols. Tom, so happy to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you. Good to see you guys.
It's great to see you too, Tom. You know, I love when our Lincoln Project senior advisors are on the show with us. We all work together very closely. We're, in communication with each other, but we rarely get to see each other face to face. So it's really nice to have you here and to have the two of you and Susan together. This is a great team. So let's just jump right into things, Tom. We've been talking a lot about how a Joe Biden administration is going to be just so different from a Donald Trump administration. And we've been talking about it since Election Day and looking at it from every which way. So let's just start by talking to you about that from a national security perspective. How will a President Biden be different and hopefully better for the United States of America from a national security perspective?
The most important thing about a Biden administration is that it will be full of people who you might disagree with, you might have some issues with. They're all going to be people who come from the political and policy worlds, but they are serious people. I think one of the most troubling things about the Trump administration was not just the lack of expertise and the staffing with people who are completely unqualified for their jobs. There was a real lack of seriousness about governing, and particularly about national security, where everything was simply a function of protecting Donald Trump, reacting to Donald Trump, trying to figure out what Donald Trump meant, trying to make Donald Trump look good, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And nobody was minding the store. There was nobody really trying to figure out how do we protect America, what's best for the United States, what's the appropriate role for a superpower in the 21st century. And I think the Biden administration is bringing back people who think seriously about these issues. you and I and Susan, we're not always going to agree with their calls. We're not always going to like the things they may want to do. But I think we can take seriously that they are taking it seriously, that they're trying to do their best for the country, and that they at least have some notion of what they're doing. And I think that leaves a lot of really positive room for engagement and discussion and, for supporting the country we all love, regardless of our party.
So, Tom, Donald Trump's inexperience and complete lack of respect for the job of presidency led to him to take a lot of really dangerous actions, some would say. Some would argue pulling out of the Iran agreement, meeting with Kim Jong-un. There's been a lot there that is hard to even imagine. What do you think the most consequential thing that Biden will have to fix that Donald Trump has broken on the national security arena?
Oof. Wow, that's like seeing a house being engulfed in flames and saying, I suppose the first thing we're gonna have to do here is, geez, I don't know, put out the fire. I think a couple of things. First, one of the things that I think really gives me a lot of optimism about a Biden administration is Biden is not an unknown quantity overseas. They know him. They know who he is. This is not going to be some mystery. You're not going to have all of our NATO partners and even our adversaries. Nobody's going to be holding their breath saying, is this guy crazy? What's the next thing that's going to pop out of him? I think a certain amount of predictability and stability and lowering the drama is going to be really good for the country. So I think, part of what's going to get fixed will get fixed the minute Joe Biden finishes saying, "So help me God." But I think the idea that the United States is a serious country that has to be, power is all about being taken into account to people's decisions. And one of the things we've seen in places like Iran and North Korea and Russia is that these are countries, and China, these are countries that basically now are allowed to act as if the United States doesn't even exist. This is really, I've been saying for 4 years, we're living in a world, this is what the world looks like without America. This is like the nightmare version of It's a Wonderful Life, where instead of George Bailey never being born, this is just the United States disappearing and the whole world becomes Pottersville. And so I think that the first thing he's got to do is reverse a lot of these crazy executive orders. And I think as a to-do item, stay in the New START treaty and get back to some situation of nuclear stability. Because one of the things Trump did in your list that we didn't mention is dumping the INF treaty, which is incredibly dangerous. Right.
So let's talk about that a little further, though. Something that you just talked about. It's for the last 4 years, it's been as if the United States sort of disappeared off the world stage when it came to leadership and influence and kind of being that voice that other nations, our allies looked to for guidance and to kind of take the first step. That has been completely lost under Donald Trump. Do we get that back? I mean, is it as easy as our allies, everybody in NATO already knows who Joe Biden is. And so now I'm sure they're all breathing a sigh of relief, just like we all are, that he's the one stepping into the Oval Office. But other entities, other leaders have stepped into that void in the last 4 years. What happens for, now, as far as that goes? How does the United States and Joe Biden in particular become a leading voice on democracy and freedom and kind of global influence again?
Had this gone on for another 4 years, I'd probably be sitting here saying it's unrecoverable. That, we really, we always talk about, this was the most important election of our lifetime. But I think 4 more years of Donald Trump, the United States would have been in an unrecoverable dive when it comes to international leadership. So I think to some extent, the repair will happen because the United States has shown decisively and loudly that we reject what Donald Trump brought us to. And so in that sense, I think, Joe Biden's going to get a lot of that repair will happen just by Joe Biden taking office. With that said, I think, Biden is going to have to reach out. And I'm a big fan of back channels. I began my career studying the old Soviet Union, and I'm a Russia expert by training. I think Biden's going to have to send people who have his confidence, people who can say that they speak quietly for Biden, and they're going to have to go to places like Moscow and Beijing and say, look, the party's over. 4 years, you guys have gotten away with murder. We understand it was a fluke. It was a bad time, but that's done. And now we're going to have to get back to the way things used to be. The damage that is permanent, I would say, is that the people of the United States have proven that they are capable of doing this, of going this off the rails with something like NATO. We've never had a president. I mean, this is a president who hates NATO more than the Russians hate NATO. And so to me, the metaphor I always use, it's like having a best friend or a significant other who hits you one day, lashes out and actually hits you and says, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean that, I lost my temper. And even if it never happens again, it's now in the back of your mind. Our allies will always have to say, the Americans are capable of this. They're capable of losing their minds this badly. And I think it will take years for that mark, that sting, that fear to kind of recede. And I think we'll never be at 100% again, but I think we can get close.
Yeah, Tom, one of the things I believe that really shocked not just people like us in the Republican Party, but our partners around the world was the silence among the Republican senators, the leadership in the Senate, when it came to national security, and as well as foreign policy. And I think that the breakdown there, that they were willing to kind of go with Donald Trump, with exceptions, very few times, they would even, or at least be silent. That sent a real shockwave through the international community. Do you expect to see more cooperation with the Senate now if it stays in Mitch McConnell's hand with the Biden administration, that we may see it will be more stable? They'll stay together on such important issues?
I think some of those guys are going to try and whitewash the past 4 years and say, "Oh, well, we're going to the intelligence briefing now, and we're being very serious, and we're grown-ups, and we always understood that Russia and China were threats, and we're United States senators, and this is us, with our very serious faces." I think the damage is permanent on that score with the Republican Party. I mean, it's so hard to explain to people when they say to me, how could you have been a Republican? You're, such a conservative, pro-NATO, anti-Russia. It's like 1980s when I became a conservative, the Democrats were the people saying, oh, everybody should be our friend and we should go pick coffee with the Sandinistas, and, the Pentagon is the source of all evil, and, blah, 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 blah. And the Republican Party was the one saying strong national defense, leaders of the free world, city on a hill. We've totally exchanged positions on that. I mean, I did not think that I would live long enough to see the Republicans be the party of Kremlin stooges and the Democrats being the party holding the hard line on national defense and national security. But here we are. So I think no matter what they try and say, I think that, they cannot sponge away the stain of the past 4 years in the Republican.
But you make me think of something interesting that maybe we should have talked about at the beginning of this conversation. At the Lincoln Project, we're very focused on the idea of defeating Trumpism. Like, we've recognized from the beginning that just beating Donald Trump at the ballot box wasn't going to be the end of the argument or the end of the fight. This Trumpism has just infiltrated the Republican Party to such a degree that it's going to damage our country for a generation at least. But Tom, from a national security perspective, from the idea of what is the United States of America's national security policy or position, how do you define Trumpism on that stage?
I think all of it comes from Trumpism having been a cult of personality where all other interests, including national interests and national security, were subsumed under making sure the leader stays in power. And I think Trumpism after Trump, and I'm actually one of those optimists. I don't believe that Trump is going to be nearly as powerful in our public life after January as other people are concerned about. He's a clown. A lot of people are going to rat him out. There's a lot of people that have a lot of scores they want to settle with that whole bunch of thugs that he brought with him into the White House. But I think insofar as there's a thing called Trumpism in national security, it's going to be whatever's good for keeping Republican senators and House members in power is good. And if that's bad for the United States, so be it. And I think that's the thing we have to fight against, is that, that there will still be Republicans who are going to try and rile up the folks back home by being America firsters, anti-NATO, misleading people about foreign aid and nuclear weapons and China and Russia. And I think that's where the Never Trumpers, the Lincoln Project type folks like us, and the few Republicans of goodwill who are left have to join with the Democrats to say that is not what national security is about. This isn't about protecting the fortunes of one party. It's about protecting America.
Yeah, I'll be fascinated to see if there are Republicans of goodwill who come forward in that moment. To your point, there are.
I might have been a little optimistic there.
I would say there are so few left. I just think that those 2022 elections are still going to be so important to really being able to turn things around, not just, less so on specific policy and more so, this idea of Trumpism and being able to redirect the country in the way that we go. So here's a question for you that's very short term. Trump has, 43 days left in office. We see the kinds of things that he's doing so far, trying to take advantage of that, even though he keeps fighting and saying the election wasn't credible, was rigged, wasn't legitimate. He's starting to give out pardons to people like Michael Flynn. We've heard the stories kind of behind the scenes, what's happening inside the White House. But from on the national security level, whether we're talking about Russia or China or NATO for that matter, like with 43 days left, what's the worst thing that Donald Trump could do? Or is there anything realistic that we should be keeping our eye on, that we should be genuinely concerned about from that view?
I don't want to be Dr. Doom or Professor Buzzkill here, but let's be honest. Will have the full. He has the full powers of the presidency until January 20th. So what's the worst thing you do? You start a war. Right. He could order military action. He could embroil us in a gigantic crisis simply because he wants to. And of course, what he's done in the interim, the past few weeks, is fire everybody around him who might be able to say no, so that he's surrounded with all these powerless acting guys. Because there's no position Donald Trump loves more than having everybody around him be an acting temporary position. Now, will he do that? Unlikely. I think the story a few weeks ago where he was looking for options on Iran, and basically all the people around him said, "These are not the droids you're looking for," and kind of waved him off of that, was a good sign. I suspect that what he will do is drive a lot of good people out of government with all of this kind of goonish score settling that's going on right now, with firing people, trying to give people titles that they can trade on. People walk out and say, "Well, I was the Pentagon Chief of Staff for 10 years." But that disrupts a lot. And it means that our enemies are probably noticing that and saying, we need to solidify any of our gains overseas while the candy store is still open and before the grown-ups show up. And that could lead to some kind of a miscalculation by some of our opponents overseas. I think the other thing we should look out for is, who is he allowing to burrow into the bureaucracy in the national security environment? And I think Biden's people are going to have to make sure that they, pay real attention to that. Primarily by one of the things I think they should do is reverse that insane executive order about turning appointees into civil service, fireable, at will people. I mean, in national security and defense, that's a bad idea anywhere. What's the worst he could do? He could leave Joe Biden a war. If he was really determined to do it, he could probably get away with it.
All right, I'm going to have Dr. Buzzkill leave the room and switch to something hopefully a little more optimistic, although still somewhat depressing. Is I happen to agree with you, Tom, that I question how much Trumpism will play out. For this reason alone, is that Donald Trump now is also distracted by the lawsuits that he faces in New York, and that he will face once he leaves office. And we know that Donald Trump's top priority is Donald Trump. So that distraction may lead him to be focusing on himself. And once he leaves office, his words will matter a lot more. as he has to potentially take the oath of office, etc., and how that will affect the cases. So, if in fact the Trumpism is subsided a little bit, what is there, or is there hope for the Republican Party, or the fracture that we talk about breaking off? Is it a chip that just needs to kind of grow somewhere and take its time? Or can we kind of get back to bringing principles back to the party and have a two-party system?
There's a lot of hope for the country, but I don't think there's a lot of hope for the Republican Party as it's currently constituted. I mean, it really needs a house cleaning from the top down. I mean, started the Republican National Committee and that whole bunch of sycophants, starting from Ronna McDaniel, who used to be Ronna Romney McDaniel until that was uncool. That house cleaning has to go from top to bottom. And I think what I'm really interested to see is the emergence of a more centrist movement within the Democratic Party, because the Democrats are going to have their own reckoning. Now, they're in power. They have a really large coalition. There's a lot. Joe Biden was the guy that ignored his own left flank and gained the presidency, which I think is brilliant. And so I think this is a really great moment for people of goodwill near the center. But I think that a lot of institutional Republicans either have to shed that label, or they have to directly break with the institutional GOP in order to make that kind of a coalition work. But we survived it. We survived this 4 years. There's been a lot of damage done, but we've spoken up with a very strong national voice to move this ahead. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. If it were 4 years from now, I wouldn't be sitting here saying this. I'd be in Gitmo with Rick Wilson. But I think that there are reasons to be hopeful now, and it's really in our hands. I mean, we now have the destiny of the country in our own hands as citizens, and it's really up to us what happens next. Trump's going to have his own problems, and that whole thing was disintegrating even while he was in office. And I think they're going to be very busy, mostly stabbing each other in the back for a few years to come. There's one other thing I would say, Susan, about optimism about the future of the Republican Party and Trump, which is that there were a lot of Republicans who had to sit on their hands for 4 years and carry a lot of crap for Donald Trump. If Trump says, well, I'd like to be president, those people are not going to sit around for another 4 years biting their tongue and trying to deal with him. Because, if you're Nikki Haley or Tom Cotton, none of whom I would ever support, but if you're any of those people, you're not going to say, great, I got to put up with this for another 4 years and maybe 4 more for a total of 12 years of carrying Donald Trump's water. No, nobody looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, Tom, I agree. Nobody's looking forward to doing that. I think anyone who has done it for the last 4 years is automatically disqualified from even thinking about running for president in 2024, much less, being taken seriously on that stage either. So, Tom, when our audience heard that you were going to be with us, they had a ton of questions for you. So we're going to spend a little bit of time now hearing from the audience. Let's go to that first tweet that came in from this morning, came in from Alyssa. She wants to know, she said, question, Biden's announced national security pick equals loads of experience, but very different world now. What's the most pressing thing on the agenda to address foremost with so many serious extant issues?
I think this is a place where you can't disconnect the domestic and international problem. I think the first thing that a national security team needs to do is to reestablish faith with the country and within the National Security Council, the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, that the Office of the National Intelligence Director, that this is a bipartisan, nonpartisan, professionalized service of serving the people of the United States, because that has been something that's been lost. I think that once we can recover that, the sense that professionals are in charge, a lot of the other things will fall into place. Now, my personal feeling about the top of the agenda, the nearest thing to the agenda that Biden needs to deal with that I think is really important is saving the New START. We don't think about nuclear weapons very much, but that's because we've done a really good job for 30 years of reducing nuclear weapons, staying out of another nuclear arms race. I spent the first half of my life living under the threat of nuclear holocaust and Armageddon during the Cold War. And I don't want to see that movie again. I don't want to play that game again. So I want Biden to nip that in the bud, because Trump, remember, Trump thought the nuclear was very important because he didn't understand any of it. Trump, Trump let go of all that to people like Bolton and Tim Morrison and Rand Paul and all those other guys, and really did a lot of damage. So that's top of my list, is get the nuclear situation stabilized again by sticking with the New START.
All right, we have more for you. Let's see the next tweet that came up. All right. I would like to hear your opinion as to why the media in America coddled Trump and is still continue to do it. Also, why don't the White House press corps work together and push back whenever the White House lies? And then in parens, in a thousand at this point.
Well, on Twitter, folks have seen me explode during these White House briefings of saying, follow up on that. He just said something insane. Part of the problem, I think, is the corporatized media environment where everybody has to kind of get their question out, something they approved with their editors hours earlier to keep news flow going. I don't think it's that they're coddling him. I don't think that's fair to the media. But I think that they never quite got their reflexes back dealing with this kind of a president, that they would say, well, I'm going to a White House press briefing. I'm going to ask about taxes. I'm going to get my question. That'll be my clip, my video, and I move on. They weren't prepared for a president who gets out there and says, squirrels are talking to me, and trees are alive and have souls, and Martians are in my bathroom, stealing my shaving cream. They didn't know what to do with that, because there is a certain amount of deference to the office that was built into them. I think it took a long time, for example, for the media to say the president was lying. Like, they hate to use the word lying. And so I think, I don't think the media, just to the person who asked this on Twitter, I totally share your frustration. I totally get it. But I don't think they were coddling him. I think they were trying in their way to maintain something like norms without having to stand up, like Suresh Date did that day in the press conference. Like, when are you going to apologize for lying to everybody for years? But that wouldn't have gotten us very far. And I think it would have just made the media, I think a lot of people would have blamed the media for the fights that would have ensued. So I think mostly they did the best they could, except for those very stiff briefings where they just weren't adept at following up on some of the crazy stuff.
Yeah, and Suresh is one of my favorite reporters. He was before that, but that day, that nailed it for me right there. I thought
he was wearing a mask, and I sent him a note. I said, "Wait a minute, was that you?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Fantastic. And Tom, you may not know this, even though you just sort of said it. There's actually a story out there today about aliens. Did you see that? There's something about aliens are waiting. The aliens are waiting for us to get up to their level of intelligence and functioning, and then they're going to come out and expose themselves. And I'm embarrassed now that the whole world knows I'm aware of that story. So
that's the plot of one of the Star Trek movies. So somebody's recycling a Hollywood script.
There you go. So we've got a lot more questions for you still, Tom. Let's go to the next tweet for our audience. Coming from Dawn, she says, how do you see the Never Trump movement going forward? Is there an actual third party in the middle of the political spectrum? And happy birthday, you old coot.
I'm going to hitch my pants up.
You turned 50 yesterday. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. It was a milestone. I feel ancient. But I'm getting over it. First I'll say I don't think a third party has a lot of future because, the United States, like most other countries, is pretty structurally difficult. It's pretty structurally difficult in our country to create a third party out of nothing. It happens. It can happen. But with our first past the post voting system, the way congressional districts are organized, we pretty much have a two-party system, and that's okay. I mean, I am not a fan of multi-party parliamentary democracy because then you don't get people forced to aggregate their interests and negotiate with each other. You get the like there was in Russia some years back. You get a beer lovers party, and you get the I love dogs party, and you get the I'm from 2 blocks down the street party. I think the key here is going to be America needs a new center right party, whether we call it the Republicans under some, hollowed out shell that then gets filled in with normal, decent human beings again, or whether the Republican Party falls and we get some kind of new Federalist Party or something. I think we're going to be in a 2-party center right, center left groove, and I think that's actually a good thing. As for where Never Trump goes, I'm not one of the founders, so I'm not. I'm on board in the big party van, but I'm not driving. But I think, and we're all Never Trump movement folks here. I'm all about making sure that the enablers cannot escape the consequences of what they've done. I mean, I'm already looking forward to being Never Haley, Never Cotton, hoping that Ron Johnson gets defeated in 2022. Never letting Lindsey Graham whitewash, people like Lindsey Graham, hold my words against me. This is what I'm saying. You can take it to the bank. And then 2 years later, they're going, yeah, I don't know, that didn't happen. Well, I think people like us can be the institutional memory that says we are never going to let you or the voters forget. And as part of the national return to health, we simply cannot, and I know there's disagreements among the Never Trumpers and the conservatives, the anti-Trump conservatives, but I don't think we can ever just declare bygones and say, well, it was a tough 4 years. We all did what we had to. Absolutely not. So I'm hoping to be. Tara Setmeyer had a great line about this. She said, "I'm no longer a Republican. I'm part of a pro-democracy movement."
Yeah, and I love that line because everything that we've done here at the Lincoln Project from day one, I've said this so many times, I've never seen us as being anti-Republican Party or pro-Democratic Party or vice versa. We are pro-democracy. We are pro-constitutional governance in the United States. And I couldn't agree with you more, Tom, when it comes to the idea of some of these folks that we know are going to come forward and try to run for president, in 2024 and want to see their names on the ballot. They don't get to rewrite history. They don't get to try to convince us that what we saw with our own eyes didn't actually happen.
We're not going to let them. We're not going to let the memory hold this.
Exactly. And so there is a responsibility there for people who, like you and Susan and I, going forward to make sure that that history is neither repeated nor forgotten as we go forward. Tom, you have been fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of this. I'm glad we finally got you on, and I hope we get you back here soon. Thank you so much. And a belated, very joyous, happy birthday to you.
Thanks a lot. It was great to be with you guys. Thank
you. So, Susan, I think Tom is right on the money there, frankly, about the idea of the Republican Party and what this looks like going forward. The idea of being never Trumpers. I've always taken exception to the idea that being a never Trumper means, oh, you just hate Donald Trump. No, it's not that I hate Donald Trump. It's that I really love America. I love freedom and democracy and constitutionalism, and protecting that and preserving that, should be the top priority, in my opinion, for anybody who's in public service in the United States. So, there is a long path ahead of us still with all of this.
There certainly is, and I'll tell you something. When President Trump was elected, or when he was sworn in, I hated the term never Trumper because I always felt like, oh, I'm saying never my president. And I know that shouldn't matter, but it did to me. And that's why I have no problem being, against Trump and Trumpism, but I rather be for something. And it's much better to be for something and fighting and getting people together like we did at the Lincoln Project. You and the co-founders, we all owe you a debt of gratitude because you gave us a place to be for something, for putting country over party. And if that's not the most pro-democracy thing there is, I don't know. But we owe you and your colleagues a big gratitude.
And you're one of them. It's been so great working with people like you and Tom Nichols as we've gone forward from here. So I know a second ago before we cut over to you, people saw me looking down what was going on. Out of nowhere, I think a spider just fell in front of me. And I wanted I wanted to make sure I took care of it before it got any closer to me, because this is what happens in real life on live stream when we are working under these circumstances. Susan, it's been delightful to have you with us. I hope that you'll come back and guest host with us again sometime soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been great.
It's been great having you. Boy, that was, and a big thank you to everybody for being part of the show today. You can continue to send us your questions at #AskVoteForAmerica. We love hearing from you. We do the best we can to make sure that we bring you the information and the answers that you are looking for and that you need to stay informed. And as we often say, to stay calm. There are great things ahead for our country. And it all lies in, I hate to say it all lies in you. But, just 43 days from now, we are going to have a new president sworn in. And so there is certainly reason to be optimistic. But we're also keeping a close eye on what's happening in Georgia here at the Lincoln Project. There's an important runoff coming up in early January. We've talked to you about it before. I know we're going to talk to you about it again. But there's an important story that came out this morning about what's happening in Cobb County, Georgia. This is a county that went heavily for Joe Biden on Election Day by, I believe, 14%. And we're just learning today that this county has said that they will be opening many fewer voting locations for early voting than what the voters in that county are accustomed to having, what they've always had in the past. There were 11 voting locations in Cobb County leading up to the general election, and they're going to be down to just 5, which is interesting in a state, in a county that is primarily led by Republicans, to see that this county that went heavily for Joe Biden just a few weeks ago will now be making it harder and more difficult to vote. They talked about, they had a reason for doing it, that they aren't able to find enough poll workers and other types of concerns, but they are the only county in the state that seems to be having trouble finding enough poll workers to open up as many voting locations as they've always had in the past. This is what we're talking about when we say that we are worried about continued voter suppression coming from the Republican side of the political world in our country. When we talk about democracy and freedom and trying to disenfranchise voters, our vote, as we've said so many times, is the cornerstone. It is the cornerstone of the Constitution. It's the cornerstone of what democracy in the United States is all about. And it is your power. Your vote is your power. That's how your voice is heard. That's how you are able to influence the leadership and the future of your county, your state, and certainly more, just as importantly, your country. Your vote is your voice. So what we see happening in Cobb County, Georgia is very discouraging. A number of voter rights organizations are starting to speak up about it as well. And hopefully what we will see in Cobb County when early voting starts, I believe on December 14th in Georgia, is that all 11 of their existing voting locations will be open so that the people in Georgia will have the ability to use their vote to make their voice heard as well. Thank you for being with us today on Vote for America on LPTV. I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday at 2:30 Eastern Time.
The end is coming. The end of the noise and lies. The end of the chaos and division. The end of the hate. In its place, a new America is ready to stand tall again, ready to restore the goodness in the heart of our nation, ready to put people before politics, ready to lead, to innovate, to grow, to heal. It won't always be easy. There are tough times to come. COVID to be defeated, an economy to restore. But that new day is coming. A day when words like caring, competent, and professional won't be insults. A day when compassion and character mean more than celebrity. A day when every American's rights are respected and valued. That day is coming because of your hard work, your commitment, your energy and passion. That day is coming because of your vote. Joe Biden, our president. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.